Hello again, this is me, Daniel, and my channel, Gil T-Feet. I've got no riv. So I'm here today to do the self-aware reader tag. I was given this as homework by Very Literary Carrie, so thank you. And the tag originated with Courtney Ferreter, America's self-proclaimed Jewish mother, as if I needed another one of those. Second time I'm recording this tag because I think I messed it up so badly last time I was too embarrassed to post, so hopefully I can be a little less incompetent, and let's see how it goes. Question 1, what draws you into a novel or story, makes you want to keep reading? Plot, character, writing style, atmosphere, something else? I curate my reading ahead of time, so it's rare that I'll come to something and not have a reasonable idea of whether it's going to be plot driven or character driven, and I'm open to both, I guess. So what draws me into a novel? Something original, some decent writing, some fresh ideas, or maybe if you're in a series, it's a familiar trope, and it can be any number of things. I don't really have a great answer for this. What is a convention? Question 2. What is a convention or trope that will immediately turn you off in your reading experience with a novel or story? Immediately being turned off is, that seems a little harsh. I guess there are things that occur which will seal the deal on me not having had a great experience with a book. I'm not a big fan of stealth politics, if that makes sense, or any kind of idea that the novelist has put in there that sort of slides into your DM, so to speak. So the novel may appear to be focused on a particular character or a particular plot, but as the reading experience continues, you realise that actually what they're trying to do is hit you over the head with this particular point. And when I say politics, it may not be specifically political, or it may be something else, but something that's hidden, something that's that the author my experience is usually that they're aware of, and they've tried to cover it up with storytelling, and also that actually they had a real point, and that was to tell you this, and they want you to understand that point, and everything else was window dressing. And I've had an experience a couple of times with books where it genuinely by the end felt like the author had cared less about the characters and their story than hitting me over the head with the point that she was trying to get to all along. In this instance it was a female author, but there's no reason, that wasn't a dig. So anything where I feel the author is being slightly disingenuous, I find that probably the biggest turn-off. What appeals to you most when reading non-fiction and makes you want to keep reading? I like non-fiction, I like essays, but I guess the one of the great finds is when you discover some really good narrative non-fiction. So I tend not to read sort of history books, would approach sort of biographies and autobiographies differently, but a really strong piece of narrative non-fiction writing is a joy. Discovering something new and finding someone who has a real way of fleshing out a story that perhaps I didn't know, I certainly had never understood its importance, and hearing it told in a fresh voice that's giving space to all the players and has done the research and found the right anecdotes and told a narrative non-fiction story, I think is probably the biggest win for me, and I've had some great experiences with those. What is a convention or trope in non-fiction that would turn you off in your reading experience? So I guess one of the things that's frustrating when non-fiction starts with a hypothesis and then shoehorns the stories in to meet the hypothesis, if that makes sense. So the stories could be great, but actually the overarching theme is kind of not really there, or doesn't really make sense, and just insisting that everything fits. And I guess I'm really thinking of Malcolm Gladwell's things like the Outliers, which was a fantastically fun read, but really when you break it down makes no sense at all. So all the stories are great, but they don't actually probably mean the thing that he says it means. This sort of hypothesis of if you spend 10,000 hours doing something, you'll be great at it because Bill Gates spent 10,000 hours programming, and the Beatles spent 10,000 hours playing in Hamburg, and therefore 10,000 hours is how you become an expert at something. And totally, two great examples of people who spent 10,000 hours doing something and became great at it, and ignoring every single other instance of people who spent 10,000 hours doing something and did not become great at it, or were just perfectly fine being mediocre at it. whatever. It's a fun book to read, and probably a load of old nonsense. Would you say you read more for pleasure and enjoyment, or more to learn and exercise your brain? I read purely for pleasure and enjoyment. I don't study this. I don't do this for a living. I read books because I enjoy them. Occasionally, enjoying a book means reading something that is outside your comfort zone, that may be more of a challenge, that may be a longer, denser read. That's part of for me, that's part of the enjoyment. But I don't force myself to only read things that are difficult, because that would be less enjoyable. I like to reward myself when I read something that's difficult, but if I've read something that's difficult and I haven't enjoyed it, I'm unlikely to pursue that line any further just because I may learn something from it. I'll find another way to learn something from something else that is probably more enjoyable. What type of books are you likely to rate more highly and enjoy more overall, brain candy or brain protein? I probably reject that division between candy and protein. I don't see why one has to be one or the other. I don't mind candy and I don't mind protein, but to say that, I guess I like reading the literary equivalent of peanut M&Ms. I don't like eating peanut M&Ms, but in a literary sense, I think combining your candy and protein is not a bad thing. So why would you force these two into separate silos? Do you have a sense early on of whether or not the book you're reading will be a 5-star read? Has a book ever surprised you in this regard? I guess I read enough and I know my reading tastes enough that I probably have some idea early on whether the writing would have to be egregiously poor to not make me feel optimistic about it. I've read stuff which isn't good, but I'm perfectly happy to read it and complete it. To be a 5-star read early on, I don't know. Am I ever wrong about things? Yeah, there have been a couple of novels, I guess, where I thought I knew what I was getting and was a bit tired of it, and then it flipped the whole thing. I guess one of the biggest instances of this, and other people I'm sure have had the same experience, would be Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff, which is a novel in 2 halves, and a good 400 plus pages of total, where the entire first half is a very familiar, very male-oriented story of a marriage, and really spent the first half of the book sort of just irritating me because it was so ordinary and familiar. And then there's a point where the POV changes, and everything you thought you knew, everything you'd read and you thought you knew about this couple is completely flipped on its head. And that was astonishing and very rewarding. I had that good fortune meeting Ms. Groff at an event, and went and spoke to her and told her how I had been blown away by this. The most. So another example, and this is what I compared her book to when I spoke to her, was Philip Roth's The Human Stain, where there is a line in the beginning of a new chapter, sort of 60, 70 pages into the book, that totally make you're reading and you go, what did, and you have to go back and double check yourself, because what you've read and what you've learned up to that point seem totally at odds with each other, and it gives the book a whole new gloss. And I made that comparison to her, and she was very pleased with that. I think it's a dangerous tactic to get your reader get halfway into a book before you do it, but I think she pulled it off there. Another book that also led me down a wrong direction is a book called The Animators by Kayla Ray Whitaker, I believe. Also, sort of 60 pages into that book, I thought I knew what I was getting. Young women taking a lot of drugs, having a lot of wild times in college, and this was going to be a story about female empowerment. Nothing wrong with that, but a sort of boring story of female empowerment. And I thought I knew where it was going, and I wasn't super excited to read the next 300 pages of it. And then it goes in a totally different direction and becomes much more a story about friendship, about art, and the creation of art and what that means, and really a tremendous story. If you haven't read The Animators, highly, highly recommended. Considering books that you've rated 5 stars in the past, do you think you'd feel the same way about them now? I don't really understand the question. Only because I don't reread. The problem with reading is they keep publishing new books, which is very frustrating to me. Plus, I haven't read all the ones they published up till now, so that I don't do any rereading. I occasionally will take out a book and flick through and find a passage that I've enjoyed, but I don't start from the beginning and reread books. So to say whether my rating would change, I don't know, and I'm not that. I don't really feel the need to interrogate the feeling I had when I read Jane Austen's Emma in my early 20s and loved it and enjoyed it, and just given it to my daughter to read. She was looking to start with Jane Austen, and so to say, well, if I read it now, would I feel the same way? I don't know. I don't care. It remains in my experience, and I have sort of an impressionistic sense of what the book is, that is supported by memory, supported by reading other things and hearing other people talk about the book. So I have this version of that book in my head, as I do with many of the books I have. Some have completely disappeared from my memory, and some of them stay with me. And would I give them the same rating now? I don't know. I don't care. It is in my mind what it was at the time I read it, at the time of my life, and where I was, and how I came to that book, and where I was when I was reading it, and my experience of it is captured and sealed in amber, and I'm okay with that. And that's it. I think I hope I made a better hash of this than the last time. Thanks. Bye.